Hello and welcome to this episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous George Karseras. George, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kim, and thank you for calling me fabulous and a special guest.
Oh, you are both of those things. But before we get into our conversation, let me just share with our audience a little bit more about you. So George is a chartered occupational and chartered sports psychologist and the founder of Team Up, a UK-based management consulting firm. George has got over 25 years experience in developing executive teams across North America, Australia, Europe, the Far East and Asia. He's the author of Build Better Teams, Creating Winning Teams in the Digital Age, and Teams, Systems Within Systems in Business Psychology and Practice. George challenges outdated ways of developing teams and introduces a simple, scalable, science-based sequence of team development that fast-tracks team working in digital and transforming environments. Build Better Teams is forwarded by Ed Stafford and endorsed by Amy Edmondson and Edgar Schein. George lives with his family in North Somerset, where he loves cycling, surfing, and in his words, pretending to be an extreme sportsman. George, welcome.
Very pleased to be here.
I'm so looking forward to our conversation because I know it is going to be packed with insight that the audience can use to drive their own authentic achievement. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey so far to get us started?
Sure. Well, I came to psychology in my late 20s, so I was a late developer, I guess. My first love was sports. I tried to become a professional tennis player, but career earnings of £27.50 doesn't really equate to professional, right? So that didn't last very long. But I've always had an interest in psychology and also in medicine, I guess, because I wanted to be a doctor. So I took a kind of a elongated route to get there, but I was a medical rep for 3 or 4 years. I had a stint traveling as well to find myself. And then I eventually thought I really want to be a sports psychologist, mainly because I wasn't as good at tennis as I wanted to be. And then in order to become a sports psychologist, I was able to also become an occupational psychologist. And then I changed then. I guess I was in sort of late 20s, early 30s. I started consulting. I started doing work with teams at a small consultancy in London called Sporting Body Mind, run by Christopher Connolly and John Sire, two amazing people and amazing psychologists, taught me an awful lot. And they were the very first sports and business psychologists in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So they were they were working with Tottenham Hotspur at the time, which was a Premier football team, did very well, and they were bringing their work into the business setting. And I was privileged to work with them in both sport and business, professional psychology and sport business. And then I left. I wanted to do bigger change and cultural sort of work, so I joined KPMG Consulting, and I worked with them for 3 or 4 years. And before I decided that I would do my own thing and started my own business in 2005 without any real business plan or security or clients. Just felt I wanted to give it a go. Prepared to do it for 2 years. We had some, a little bit of equity in the house, so that was enough for me to think, okay, well, let's give it a go for 2 years. I never looked back. So I've been doing this type of work now for myself and for my own business with my own clients in the way I want to work since 2005. So I guess that makes me a veteran.
Amazing. Well, I mean, that's what, 19 years. You must have had some fascinating stories throughout those 19 years, because working for yourself has lots of ups, but it comes with its challenges, doesn't it?
It comes with its benefits, because you're your own boss, and you as they say, you eat what you shoot, or so in other words, you're totally dependent upon yourself, which I quite like. It's a true meritocracy, I guess. But also it comes with risk and uncertainty and pressure. And running a small business is not the same as being a psychologist, because there's all sorts of things I have to do in order to be sustainable, and product development and financial stuff and sales and engagement management and pipeline, and then then the fun really starts. Because what I really want to do is design workshops and facilitate and build teams and create change, right? So that's the fun stuff. But all the other stuff has to be done as well. So it's a lot, which explains why I've got no hair, and I might look about 80. But you know, it's been an enjoyable, if not entertaining, sort of what's the word? Complicated ride, I think, in some cases.
Yeah, I love that, and obviously in what you do, you're helping organisations to transform their teams, and as a result of that, transform themselves as well. So that must be really rewarding.
It is rewarding, and I get a huge kick out of people who tell me some of the things that I've been involved in that have had a dramatic impact or a substantial impact. And I think it's not just sometimes. You want to know that you're making in business. You need to be making a commercial impact. You need to be making sure that businesses and teams are ultimately more successful than they would be if you weren't doing your work. But I think the work I do is it always was. It was on my mission. Not just to build successful teams or develop leaders in a certain to be successful in their roles or change cultures, but to do it in a way which brought well-being or something like that to the people I work with. And that dual aim has always been with me from day one, and it hasn't gone away. And that is where the reward really comes, I think, in the combination of those two things.
Yeah, I love that, because I remember I'd always thought my greatest lesson in leadership came from being a hairdresser, where they taught us to listen, to really understand what the person wants, to help them to try and achieve it, and have them leave you feeling like the best version of themselves. And I guess that's kind of what you're doing, isn't it? You're helping them to understand, helping them to then achieve it, and then have them leave you feeling better as a result of the interaction, which is a great purpose to have.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add to that, it's all very true, Kim, is also that they pay money, right? They pay a fee for my time and my work. And it's not just about leaving them better, but it's about making sure that whatever they pay me, they get more from that, right? So there has to be a return on their investment, and I also take that very seriously. I feel a responsibility not to, not just to make things better, but to make things better for the money they paid, right?
Yeah.
That's another thing for me.
And it's so important, isn't it, that people feel that what they bought, they value, and they see the value is being greater than what they paid for it, which I think is got to be core to what we do, because sadly it's not always core to what everybody does in this industry. So I think setting yourself out on there and being driven by that, ensuring that they do get a positive return on that investment, not just in how they feel, but actually in the results that they see as well, is key, isn't it, to how you run your organization? I
think it's a good word you've used there, value. That's the only way really we survive in business, and there's so much change and transformation now and uncertainty, and we have to be relevant. And if to be relevant, we have to produce value, essentially. Yeah. And so the cost of employing us has to be paid back by the value we bring, and value is the big thing, right? So I think it's a nice word to use. Yeah, no, absolutely. So in 19 years plus all the time before that, you must have had so many achievements. But what would you say has been your greatest achievement so far? I know you're going to ask this question, and I had an answer, then I changed it. But I would say for a good reason. I think my greatest achievement, I can give two. Is that all right? Okay. So one of them is that you can see now, right, in this picture, I have a pool table. You can see that my office. I think what you see is what you get, and I think what I bring to my greatest achievement is that I haven't sold myself out to be successful in my work. I think people, not all clients, will want to work with me, but those that do, I think, recognize that I am who I am, and I don't try to be anybody else, and I bring myself to my work, and who you see at work is who you see outside of work. Is that my phone or your phone? Hang on 1 second. Sorry about that. So yeah, I think I carry my personality and myself outside of work in the same way as I do inside of work. So, that might mean that I might not be always as polished or as reassuringly smart or something, but as others might be in my industry. Consultants can be very impressive, and very polished, and I don't think I'm like that. I just do what I do, and I stick to myself, I think, and that's probably been my greatest achievement, is that I haven't sold myself out, and in doing that, I've managed to stay relevant, and I've done some good work. So that for me is the overriding achievement. The second one, I would say, and it is more of an ego boost than anything else, is that you mentioned in the book that I wrote. I mean, that was an achievement in itself, writing that. But I think the fact that that was endorsed and the work that I did was contributory in the field, as such, got if I was to wish for 2 people to endorse my book, and all the authors and commentators and academics and writers in the field that I'm in, I couldn't have wished for 2 better than Amy Edmondson and Edgar Schein. They're 2 heroes of mine, right? So the fact that they both came back, having read my text, and endorsed what I was saying about how to build a team and how to build a team quickly, really, it was like an amazing feeling, to have those 2. The fact that others didn't, because I'm not known in the field, and they don't often give endorsements, and they don't read. They're peppered all the time by people like me saying, "Please endorse my book. Please endorse my book." It kind of goes to the territory to a large degree, but to have those 2 not be like that, it says, it's wonderful. It really has been a major sort of validation, I think, of for me, of what I've done and what I've produced.
Amazing. I can only begin to imagine how great that must feel, particularly when they're heroes of yours. But I love the fact that you are living your life as you, and you're bringing your whole self. Because I think very often, particularly in corporate world, we get told to try and fit in, don't we? To try and mold ourselves. And I was definitely very guilty of that for a lot of years, in trying to be the corporate being that everybody expected. And it wasn't who I was. And it wasn't until I gained the confidence to just be me, which is a slightly hyperactive puppy dog approach to life. And actually I became more successful, because I became more comfortable with who I was. And I love that you've actually been able to be like that throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't always been easy. The principal reason is I make loads of mistakes, and I can be, I can be a bit sloppy in the detail sometimes, and I can be sometimes too honest or too brutal or too sensitive sometimes to criticism. So it's not easy, right? It really isn't, and I don't want anyone thinking that it's a bed of roses. It's not. It's a real a challenge to hold on to and to keep believing, right? And to take knockbacks and all those things that you have to deal with, right? So it's not. It is an achievement. I think sticking with it is how I see that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, because I think often life only really makes sense in the rearview mirror, doesn't it? When we're in it, going through it, it kind of doesn't make a huge amount of sense. Then you look back and go, right, okay, so that is why that happened, or that's why I had to make that mistake. And it's in going back and looking at it, isn't it, that where we find the real lessons to help us move forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things which I talk about, right? It defines my work is this concept of of learning, and taking something from the experiences that we have, and not beating ourselves up, but extracting learning. It's a parental thing. I have 3 children, and I they if you were to ask them, what would you think your father is most keen for you to do, they would probably, that would be up there, that you try to take something and learn from things that either you've done well or you haven't done so well, and keep that journey. For me, it's been a very important part of my sanity, is this idea of growing, and continuing to grow, and it keeps me, makes me happy, right? I'm acquiring new things and mastering things that I couldn't do. It's part of who I am. So I think we have to live our own values and be our own, know what makes us tick. And I kind of work that out. If I'm not growing, then I'm not really happy. And if I'm not making mistakes, I'm not really growing, right? So, I've got a cut on my thumb there. Can you see that cut there? That was yesterday. I've got bruises all over, all over. I mean, I fell over running up in the mountains yesterday. It was a bit slippy, and so that's just a metaphor, I suppose, or an example of a mistake that I made, right? So that's it. I make loads of them, and there's pain, but there's also learning as a result as well.
I love that, because I always believe it's not the mistake that defines us; it's what we do with the mistake. It's what we take away from it. And my nan always said, every day's a school day, and every day we should learn something.
Yeah.
That's always been my philosophy. It's like, can I learn something every single day, no matter how big or how small? But actually, that's what brings me joy, is that I become a better person each day because I'm continuing to evolve and grow.
Well, we have to ask ourselves a question. To learn, we have to then inquire, right, and be curious what happened. So when I fell over, why did I fall over? I haven't fallen over running uphill for several years. I mean, I haven't run for a bit because I've had an injury. But I think, why did I fall over? I mean, I've fallen over downhill, but why did I fall over uphill? And I just my toe caught a rock that was sticking out, and it was enough to send me over. But the reason I fell over was not because I hit that rock. The reason I hit the rock, I fell over, was the reason I hit the rock, which was that I was thinking about something that was rather stressful at the time, and it was causing me some discomfort. And because I was not really focused, it was not a nice thought. It was some conflict I'm encountering in my private life, and that was enough for me to take my eye off, or have my natural kind of judgment of the terrain compromised, and then I fell over, right? So the lesson is, if you're going to not think about if you're not going to focus on the terrain when you're running in tricky terrain, then don't think nasty conflict thoughts. Think something else, or don't think at all. That's the lesson I would take from that.
Yeah, I guess it's about truly being present to what you're doing, isn't it? And that's easy to say and hard to do, because our brain just doesn't switch off just because we've gone, I tell you what, right now I'm going to focus, because it's got a crafty little way, hasn't it, of trying to drag us into what it wants to do.
I think we're human, right? So that's the thing. We have to accept the reality that we're human, and the brain is not easy to manage, right? It's especially my brain.
I think mine always comes up with exactly the worst thing at exactly the wrong time, and you're like, really? Now that's what you've decided to go with. I guess when we're present to it, we can kind of we can try and go, I will think about that, but not right now. Right now I need to think about something different to be present. So what would you say has been the greatest lesson you've learned so far?
I think for me, it's a good question, right? Because I've been talking about learning, so I've done lots of lessons over the years, right? Lots of them. So what stands out? I suppose something which I was told by a mentor, a coach, Marilia, who lives in Cardiff, who's been very good for me, very helpful, and a lovely lady. She made a point years ago, which I never really actually had heard before, and it was resonated and still does to this day. And I still quote it actually a lot to my own clients, which is that intention doesn't excuse effect, right? So that, let me just break that down a bit, because authenticity is very important, and it's a bit of a buzzword, and having positive intention is also important and talked about a lot. You know, what's our intention, our purpose, having good intention. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what our intention is. If we do something and it causes an effect on somebody else, and that effect is real, and it's not a nice effect, especially, then we can't justify that effect on the basis we have good intention, right? And so for a lot of the time until I heard that, I was giving people, I think, too much, including, you know, my late departed father, who's no longer with us. I think, you know, he wasn't always the easiest person to deal with, and he always meant well, right? He was a Greek, quite a strong, well, very strong character, as many Greek men are, especially second generation immigrants, and a very strong character, incredible integrity, and an amazing man, huge love for all of us. But sometimes the love that he had, and sometimes what he was trying to do, didn't always have it affected me in ways that weren't helpful. And I never really validated that at the time, and that didn't do me any favors, right? And it was a mental anguish in many cases. And until I was sort of realized that the intention he had didn't excuse the effect. The effect is real, and therefore I'm validated for the feelings I had, you know. And that was a big thing for me. I think that's relevant in many cases in my work now. You know, that we mustn't excuse people just because they meant well. What they've done has had an effect, and it's real. And we need to accept that.
And you have to look at both sides of that, don't you? I remember in a particularly difficult feedback session many years ago, I suddenly had a breakthrough, which sadly I had it half an hour into the meeting. Would have been so much better if I'd had it at the start, which is, people, when you're giving them feedback, people will talk to you about their intention, and you're talking to them about their impact. So actually, if you start with, this is what I think you're intending to do, and we agree on that part, they're much more able to listen to what their impact was if it wasn't in complete alignment with what they intended.
Spot on. That it gives us then the opportunity to align with the outcome we're trying to achieve, and they know that you know their intention, and then they feel there's an arm around them, which you can then you know, combine with, and you know, what happened is not acceptable. It's not what we want, and it hurt somebody, or it was not, you know, then we can give the tough love right on the back of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's important to do that.
Yeah, and I think it just allows them to realize that they're not under attack. You know, you're not saying, I think you're a bad person, I think you're trying to mess up. It's like, I think you're a good person, I think you're trying to do the right thing. That doesn't excuse me. But it means that we're not questioning your intention and how your value set. We are going to talk to you though about the impact you've had, and that's the piece that we need to change. But I think sometimes we do end up in those conversations where we're at cross wires, don't we? Where we're talking about what happened and they're talking about what they hoped would happen. It's like, well, we need to get those back in alignment so that we can actually move forward and help you to achieve what you were trying to achieve instead of what you did.
Yeah, I see it all the time. See it on TV, you know, and it's also, I see it with weak apologies, when people do something, or politicians, you know, they will say, well, I'm sorry if that wasn't my intention. I'm sorry if that was, you know, that was great, you know, it wasn't my intention to do that. And then they kind of half justify the apology is, I'm sorry that it turned out that way, but my intention was good, type thing. So it's almost like I'm not that culpable for what happened, right?
Yeah.
They play that card, and there's not enough ownership given for the fact that, irrespective of what they were trying to do, they did do something that wasn't helpful, and therefore they need to be apologizing much more wholeheartedly for the impact that had, and not sometimes not even talk about the intention, right? It's not relevant. they had the impact. It wasn't helpful, and leave it there. So it's used as a justification, I think, too much.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is more about that owning what happened and then doing something different about what you've done to put it right. And sometimes you can't take back what you've done, but you can make sure you don't do it again, can't you?
To bring it to life, and the example that was given, I still quote it actually, is when a parent is crossing a road with a child, and the child suddenly runs across, and nearly the car stops and narrowly avoids a catastrophic collision, right? And the parent is so upset and full of fear and so agitated that they grab the child and then they beat the child, to say, you never do that again. And they beat them. And they're doing it because they don't want them to do it again, right? So the intention is to protect their child. But actually the effect of that, as we all know, is catastrophic, right? In terms of the damage that would do to the child. So the child later on is going to be thinking, well, they meant well, and therefore, my fear and depression or anxiety, whatever is coming out of that, it's down to me, not down to that situation. And so I think the example I gave that was given to me actually is a good example, because it doesn't matter what their intention was. That beating should never have happened, right?
Yeah.
End of, and that's the end of it, right? So I think that is an example just to bring it to life. If anyone's is interested in this, I just thought maybe an example might bring it to life a little bit what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, and that's a great example, because I think in those moments when a child is in danger, as a parent, you just want them to be safe, and sometimes that you might. I always try and talk to my little girl about it. So she ran off one time. She was looking at colouring, and I couldn't find her anywhere in this shop, and the panic just kept rising until in the end, I think it was screaming her name and charging around the shop, and then when she's here, and I was like, oh, thank goodness. Managed to take a moment to calm myself, and then bent down to her level to say, did you not hear me, darling? Because Mummy was really panicked because I couldn't find you and you weren't responding, and I thought something awful had happened. And we had this little chat, and I came up to my husband, she was like, you are so calm. She said, my son did that last week, and I think I knocked him into next week. And I was like, well, I think she didn't understand the consequences of her action. So there's no point me yelling at her or I'm in chaos. There's no point making her join me in chaos. But I need her to understand that she can't do that next time, because what if something had happened? But I don't think we do always take that time, do we, to kind of think of the long-term impact of what we're going to do on the child. And having had to unpick some of my own childhood to realise what I made it mean for my adulthood, I'm trying really hard with my little one not to put that in there. But it's easier to say than to do at times, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is.
So, George, I'm coming to the end because I'm very conscious of your time, albeit I could chat to you all day. If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
My younger self, I think I was overly concerned with what people thought of me, and I had a lot of fear, I think, of the outcomes that I was seeing. And I think the younger self would have benefited from being more concerned with the inputs what I can control, right? What I can influence. And I can influence really, as I do now. I hold myself to account, I guess, for what I do and the effort I put in and the judgment I take and the values and the person I try to be and so those are things I can control, right? So therefore I think the judgment, the advice would be, don't be focused so much on what people are thinking. Just make sure that you think you're okay and you stand by your own standards and your own, and then whatever comes out of that is feedback, right? And if that's something that you can change, or you want to change, then that's okay. That's what life's about. But focus more on yourself and in terms of what you bring and what you stand for, and less concerned about how that lands. I think would be so. I would be less fearful in my interactions and in my work, I guess, and my friendships, and all the interactions I would have had.
I love that. Great advice. It reminds me of a quote that I can never remember whose quote it is, but the quote is, other people's opinion of you is none of your business. Which I loved when somebody said that, because I was like, oh my God, I always thought it was my business. But once you give that up and go, actually, the only person whose opinion I can control is my own. Yeah. And that's living my values, doing what I believe is the right thing, and then being wholeheartedly accountable if I get that wrong. And doing something different is all I can actually control.
I think I realised that, Kim, when I actually was, for the first time, I remember actually not being bothered by or worried by the fact that someone didn't like me, or didn't like what I did, or didn't, and I felt I was okay. I didn't know anything. It was more about them than it was about me. And for years, I would never have actually felt that was okay. I would have really taken too much responsibility for that. And it was all about me, and I'd have had terrible guilt and terrible shame and terrible, inappropriate sort of self-recrimination. And actually, when that happened, I remember thinking, it's great. Actually, this person doesn't like me, or doesn't like my approach, doesn't whatever. I'm really happy, actually, because I'm not bothered by it now. It was like, it was a sense of freedom. And it took a long time. It took a long time to get there. And I think that would be my advice, would be to try to shortcut that. And that's what I try to do with my children. It's easier said than done, right? Much easier said than done.
Yeah. But I think just the fact that you're focused on it, there was another quote that really struck me when I saw it, because I tried for years to be everybody's cup of tea. And we're British. We could argue about how we take our tea as much as we could about politics and religion. But the quote was, I'd rather be somebody's shot of whiskey than everybody's cup of tea. And I was like, that's it. For the right people, you'll be their shot of whiskey. And for the rest of them, they're just not your people. That's okay.
Yeah.
You can leave it there.
I quite like the quote. I wouldn't want to join a club that would have me as a member. That's my favorite. That's Groucho Marx, which I think is brilliant, actually.
That is probably one I should follow, because that is probably very, very true. So, George, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Well, I'm not very active these days on social media. I do have quite a few followers on LinkedIn that I don't actually engage with, because I'm kind of in transition with my business in terms of trying to build something which I'm going to be announcing or launching at some point in the near future. But they can. I'm on LinkedIn, and my email address is george@team-up.company, and the website which we are restructuring is www.teamup.company. So they can just find me, and if they wanted, and I guess they really want to quick access, an easy way is to go on Amazon, and my book is on there. Build Better Teams. George Karseras, Build Better Teams, and that is a way that they can also access my work in an easy way, because it's a lot of it is in the book.
Amazing. We will make sure all of those details are in the show notes below. But George, it's been an absolute delight, as it always is, to chat to you. Thank you so much for sharing such great insight and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate you having been on.
Great. Always nice to talk about me. Thank you for letting me do that.
Pleasure. Until next time, take care.
Thank you. Bye.